Hello, welcome everyone. Whether you're watching it live or you're watching it back, this is the chat about Edgedancer, the first novella in the Stormlight Archive series. This book comes between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. So if you have not read anything in the Stormlight Archive, this is obviously going to be spoilers, but if you have not read Words of Radiance, I would not recommend reading this one first, and I would recommend coming back to this show after you have, because there are a lot of things in this book that would be spoilers for Words of Radiance as well. So just a heads up from the beginning. I don't want anyone to get spoiled, because I feel like spoilers for books is one of my least favorite things ever. And I don't know if anyone else feels the same way. I know some people don't care, but I care. So
for me, it depends on the book, right? Like, if I get spoiled for the ending of a romance, I'm like, well,
they end up together. Oh, shocker.
I knew I knew what was going to happen. And sometimes I prefer to know, because otherwise I just feel like stressed the whole time.
I feel like if a book is legitimately a romance, it has to have a happily ever after, right?
Yeah,
like,
it has to,
otherwise it is a different thing, right? You have to clarify whether it's like a tragic romance, right? Because then you don't know. But if it's an actual romance, it technically has to have a happily ever after, according to the people in the romance community. I am not a romance expert by any means.
No, that is right. I more meant like, I don't necessarily mind knowing what the third act conflict is going to be and when it's going to be, and like when they're going to reconcile and all that. Like,
I feel like you can always guess miscommunication, and 99% of the time you will be right. So
yeah, I hate it. I hate it.
I hate it so much. I feel like that's my biggest complaint with romances. But on the plus side, that doesn't tend to be the conflict in fantasy. Like, obviously sometimes it happens, but Edgedancer. Okay, let's start with what I think is probably the most discussed and maybe like controversial thing about Edgedancer, which is the main character of Lift. I feel like everyone has their opinions, and she is a very polarizing character, actually. How do you feel about Lift in this book in particular, not thinking forward?
I really don't have a problem with Lift at all, and I never have. And I understand why people find her irritating. And honestly, I don't really understand why I don't find her irritating, because I'm not like a kid kind of a person. But I like her. She doesn't bother me. So I couldn't tell you why, because I feel like that just is not what I would expect of myself. But yeah, I've never had a problem with her. I quite like her. I especially like that she comes along with Wendell, because I think Wendell is hilarious.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't have a problem with Lift, but I know that I'm probably in the minority on that.
Yeah, I will say I kind of agree with you. I'm a little bit on the same side with that. I tend to feel I don't really like Lift. Like, she's not one where I'm like, ooh, we're getting a Lift book and I'm excited about it. Like, I don't like her, right? Like, I'm not on the positive feeling side. I feel like I'm more in the neutral area, whereas I do enjoy this book a lot. I really love the story, and I kind of like how she is with wanting to like help people and like having her own little sense of morality and stuff. Like, I do like those aspects, but I will say I don't enjoy the majority of her humor. But I agree with you that when she comes with Wendell, I love the humor that goes with him.
Yeah, totally.
It is absolutely hilarious. It's one of my favorites. I love Wendell, and I tend to like their humor together. Yeah. But I don't really like her humor when it's like her, right? Like some of the weird jokes that she makes about like saying inappropriate things and be like, it's not inappropriate because of I'm like, I don't know. I just think it's not my type of humor, right? It's kind of like the teenage boy humor.
Yeah.
And that's not my type. Like, I just don't find that funny.
No, I mean, I don't find it funny, but also it doesn't really bother me. I'm just like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. I feel like it's just kind of like, I could live without it quite easily. But it doesn't drive me nuts. Whereas I know some people like absolutely hate
Hate
Lift.
her.
Like they
Yeah.
cannot take it. And I do understand that. Like I get it. Her personality, especially like if you were with her in person, I feel like she would be extremely irksome.
Yeah.
Like drive you nuts. My thing is though, the people that absolutely love Lift, which Brandon Sanderson has said that Lift is one of his favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really?
I
Like,
do find
Lift?
her really interesting. Like her whole situation, I think, is really interesting, and I hope that we kind of get more of her backstory and like what's gone on between her and Cultivation. I think that's all really fascinating.
Yes, I agree, especially like her backstory with losing her parents. Obviously, she is an orphan, and at this point, we don't really know much about her backstory, right? We know that she lost her parents and she has been on her own, and that she went to the Night Watcher. That's the name of it, right? The Night Watcher?
Yes.
And requested that she remain a child forever and never age.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's about like the extent we know about her backstory.
Well, I think actually she asked to not grow up.
Oh, yes.
Which I think is a little bit different. Which
That's
is
true.
why she's like so upset about the fact that she is physically getting bigger.
Right.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've read.
They don't say it specifically in the book because I was kind of looking for it. They don't say specifically like her wording here in Edgedancer.
No, that's right. I think it's just kind of alluded to.
Yeah, that she requests not to grow older. And then she's like, I'm getting bigger. I'm changing, like I can see it. And she's like, this isn't what I asked for. I know that this is going against what I asked for. But like in her mind, she's almost like in denial about it, where she's like, no, I'm still 10. Like I can't get older than 10, even though she's 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. So
I think there's a lot in this book that is it's quite complicated in terms of like the magic system.
Yes.
And I do get a little bit lost in this one actually, because I feel like there's just so much going on.
I really felt like this reread, I understood it so much better because I agree with you. When I first read Edgedancer, I was like, what just happened? Like, who were those people? Who were those people? Who were those people? Like, what is this? But I feel like the second time I tried to focus on it a little bit more and be like, okay, like, listen, pay attention to what's being said. And I feel like I did get it a lot more, but I will say I think I understood it so much more because I've read more books further on in the series.
Yeah. See, I haven't read it since I've read Rhythm of War. So I've read it twice, but I haven't read it since Rhythm of War came out. So I am wondering if I might feel differently about it this time or understand it better, especially because Rhythm of War is so science heavy.
Yes, I think you will. I really feel that reading this one back through again after reading later ones felt so much more comfortable. Like I was like, okay, I feel like I get what, and it's actually, I think something that helps me feel more comfortable in it was the fact that I've read other books within the Cosmere, because there are actually I feel like two really big connections that you pick up in this book after reading other books that I had not read them at that point, or maybe I just didn't get the connect. Well, one of them I know I hadn't read, but another one I either hadn't read or didn't pick up the connection. So yeah, I feel like having that knowledge helps a bit personally, because I agree with you. The first time I read Edgedancer, I was like, I feel dumb. Like, did this is a novella and I am feeling lost.
But then to be fair, I feel that way about Dawnshard as well. Like Dawnshard is really complicated.
Dawnshard is packed with information that's Cosmere heavy. And I think that's the thing, is both of these novellas in the Stormlight Archive are very Cosmere heavy.
Yeah,
for sure. I agree. I actually feel that this novella is extremely well written because of the fact that it is a story that is being told by a child. We're following this child's perspective, but it is a really heavy, dense, a lot of different like important Cosmere things happening in it, but is still told in a way that we're following a child and having this child's story be what's taking us through, which I think is probably so difficult to do because of how complicated it is.
I think he does pretty well at that in general. Like, well, I think he does well with novellas in general. Like, Emperor's Soul is probably similar length.
I
I would think
Soul.
to this one.
I think it's similar, maybe even a little shorter.
Yeah. And also he does pretty well with the child's voice, because like I've read Alcatraz and I really like that series. And
I
think
haven't read it yet.
well with the voice, and then same with The Rhythmatist. It's a similar kind of age situation. I think he does really well.
I kind of refuse to read Rhythmatist because it's not finished. I own it, but it's like the George R.R. Martin stuff where I'm like, I don't want to, and I trust Brandon Sanderson so much more than I trust George R.R. Martin. But I'm like, I don't want to get stuck in something that's not done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got enough other stuff for you to read that you don't really need until he gets back to it eventually.
Yeah. But I do own all of the Alcatraz, so I should read those.
They are, I mean, whether or not it is teenage boy humor, so you might not find them funny. I found them funny because I went in accepting that that's what it is, and that's what I was expecting. But yeah, I found the premise really amusing. The whole like librarians are the evil antagonists. I just think the whole thing is quite amusing.
I'm gonna have to give it a go. I want to read everything by Brandon Sanderson eventually, but yeah. I did notice though, and I think this is something I didn't notice the first time around, but the second time through, Lift uses starvin as her like swear word, right? Whereas everyone else, even in this book, uses storming.
Yeah.
And so I just found that really interesting, and it makes me wonder, like, has she always been this way? Did she pick this up because she was a child on the streets and she was hungry all the time? Or is it since she's bonded with Wendell and now she if she's not eating, she doesn't have her investiture, and is that where it comes from? I don't know. I'm just like kind of intrigued as to why Lift uses starvin and everyone else uses storming.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it before. I guess it could be that because she's a child, she's like not allowed to swear, and so she uses like a different, similar.
That's possible. I know it's just like a little thing, but she used it like 10 times, I think, in like the first 3 pages, and so I was like, okay, this is like it's very.
I love that she calls Wendell a Voidbringer as well.
Oh my gosh. I love how Wendell the whole time through is like, I wanted to bond this old lady who gardens, and yet I got you.
Wendell's the best. So
Wendell is so the best. He's hilarious.
Can you imagine him and Patton just in a room hanging out together? It would be so funny.
I cannot. Wendell would just be like complaining the whole time, and Patton would be like,
No making.
Oh, I love it. I did actually think that reading it this time through, again, I noticed a little bit more, and I was like, why did Wendell not get to choose who he bonded, but Syl did? And it sounds like most of the Spren get to choose who they bond, right? Like that's not, especially moving forward when we learn more, it really seems like this is a choice. But Wendell he didn't want to bond Lift at all, but his mother told him he had to bond her, which I find, and it was almost like they had like what the conclave voted, like chose her. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, like I feel like I have a theory as to why that might be the case, but I'm also worried that it might be a spoiler because I can't remember where exactly the discussions that I'm referencing happen. So maybe we'll have to come back to it in a later show.
I also will say that I do not remember nearly as much from Oathbringer onward. Like, I feel like my memory of Way of Kings was the best, and then Words of Radiance was pretty good. Edgedancer, I remembered the whole story well, but I didn't remember all the little details. And then past this, like, I can tell you kind of like who dies, who does betray, like that type of stuff, right? Like the big
things
stuff. But if like the little details are so vague for me, which was why I'm so glad I'm like rereading it now.
How many times have you read Oathbringer and Rhythm of War?
Once. This is my first reread through all of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm really picking up on a lot more this time, which is good because I have heard that the fifth one is just going to be like, he's not holding back. He's just like, here's the Cosmere. It's going to dump it on you. And you're like, oh, okay. Sounds good. I'll just try to swim.
Well, I don't think that I have... I think the only one that I've reread since Rhythm of War came out is The Way of Kings. So I haven't reread Words of Radiance and Oathbringer with the context of Rhythm of War.
Rhythm of War was intense.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and also, I will also point out, I feel like Wendell remembers so much more than like Pattern or Syl, who are
like
the main ones.
Yeah.
Like Syl remembers so little.
Nothing.
And Pattern remembers a little bit where he'll be like, ooh, I know this is dangerous. And she's like, why? He's like, I don't know, but I know it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. But Wendell's like walking her through, like he even knows the words investiture and surge, like he knows all the things. He knows what her individual surgings are. He knows what Night Radiant he is very knowledgeable.
And she's quite far along in her oaths, even at this point. Like she's the furthest, I think.
I think she did her second, right?
I thought she was on her third in this one.
She on her third? I thought she did her second in this one, but I could be wrong.
I don't know.
She did the I will remember those who have been forgotten. And one other. Yeah.
I can't remember.
I guess I don't really remember their order. Like I feel like Kaladin's are the ones that we're the most familiar with.
I'm gonna look it up. Hang on.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I feel like she was. I'm sure I heard Sando talking at some point about her being the most advanced in her oaths at the point of Edgedancer.
So it would have been third then, because Kaladin was at 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because he did his first one in the first one and his second one in the second one.
Yeah.
So this would have had to have been her third. And she does create a shard fork. So she's at the point of being... Poor Wendell. I love him so much. And I think it's so crazy where she's like, you garden chairs? Yeah. What else am I going to garden? I'm like, what? You are crazy. But yeah, I do find that, and it's, yeah, I don't know. Is it because he was like chosen and sent and the others went on their own? But I think Pattern was also chosen. Like he was chosen as the one to be sent.
Yes.
Yes. Whereas Syl went on her own against.
Well, she broke out, right?
People. Right. Yeah. So Pattern and Wendell were chosen. Wendell's person was chosen too. And I think, if I remember right, Pattern's person might have been, like, Shallan might have been chosen.
He had choice as to who.
Yeah, I think he said somewhere in Words of Radiance is, we chose you because of you didn't break. He's like, you used the lies to not break. I think. So they might, or maybe she was like one of his suggestions, one of his options, and he ended up choosing her. But yeah, I just find it so interesting, the different politics behind the Spren and how they come through and pick. And whereas Syl is just like, I'm going to do my own thing. I like Kaladin. I'm going to pick him. And yeah. Oh, Syl. But
I think where's the third in Edgedancer?
She does. So that one is her third one that she's swearing. I don't think it made it super clear in the book because I paid attention and I don't think it says which one it was.
Yeah, it was the third. She
the
swore the second in Words of Radiance.
Right, it's when she brings her friend back, which is also in Edgedancer. Yeah. And then the third one when she's at the end kind of like fighting with darkness. Darkness, I think, is an extremely interesting character. I find him so intriguing, particularly in this book from the perspective of Lift. Yeah. She knows nothing about him. She doesn't know anything about his background and
right. And I feel like we don't really know much about him either. And he's like this mysterious, but he feels important.
Yeah. Well, he's like everywhere, it feels like. He's involved in, he's like involved everywhere, right? And it's like he knows, right? It's like he already knows so much more than everyone else. And we do find out in this one that he's a herald.
Yes.
But yeah, I really think I like how he has this real contrast between being super self-aware and being in so much like denial at the same time. It's very interesting. Whereas he's here talking about like, where is it? I put a little marker in here when he's like, talking about how you have to have these external rules to help guide you. And he's like, your minds can't be trusted. Even my mind, especially my mind, cannot be trusted, right? So he recognizes that.
Yeah, and I think that's almost like a hint back to the, did they call it the prelude? No, not the prelude. The bit before the prelude. It was the prelude. I can't remember what he called it.
Way of Kings?
Way back times. The very first thing that you read in the Way of Kings. I feel like it's hinting back at that. And I wonder if we're going to get some answers on all of that in the final book, because I'm still confused.
Yeah, I don't know how you would not be confused. Like, I don't know. It's like, I loved that beginning part because I feel like it's kind of setting us up for information that we're not even going to get till the very end of the series, which is,
oh, you think?
So impressive. And even then, right, there's going to be the second chunk of it. So it's like, we're not going to get information for so long.
Yeah, so you think we won't get it until the end of book 10?
I think we won't get all of it until the end of book 10. I think we're going to get a huge chunk in book 5. And then we're going to be like, oh, actually, there is so much more that you didn't know. And then it's, that's what I think. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. Another thing that I did not notice the first time that I read through, and I actually don't think that I had read the other Cosmere book at the time, so that might be part of it, is I didn't recognize the, like, when Seth was talking to his sword and calling it Sword Nimi.
Oh, okay.
I did not pick up on that the first time through. And so I was like, oh, wait a second. Wait. Like,
Oh, right. So you hadn't read the relevant other book when you read? Because when did I read it? I think that the suggestion is to read it between Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. So I think that I read it before I even started Stormlight. Now
that I've read it again and picked that up, I agree. That would be the best place to read it.
Yeah.
Because when I don't even think I recognized it in Words of Radiance, this read through. Like, it just didn't quite register because, like, you know, it was a lot going on. It was really intense stuff, right? And so, but this time when I was like, why is he talking to his sword? And then he pulls it out a little bit. I'm like, oh, no. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? So I was so excited. And now looking back, I'm like, how did I not put this together when I read Warbreak? When I read a different book?
Did you pick up other things in Words of Radiance from said unnamed other book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And in this one as well, there is stuff from another unnamed other book where I'm like, oh, yes, you're right. Look at that connection. So yeah, I really feel that after having read them, reading Stormlight through again, there is so much. Like there are so many connections.
Yeah, there are.
Which
And
is
I think the further you read into the series, the more you start to pick up on them. So even if if you've read it all through once and you've read the rest of the Cosmere and you've read it through once and then you go back and read it again, even just doing that, you pick up even more Cosmere stuff, I think.
I think right now the only how I could be wrong. The only thing I think I'm missing is Sunlit Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I really think that's the only one I have left.
I would suggest that you read that before your reread of Rhythm of War.
Okay, I'll do it.
I think.
No, I like that.
I feel like you'll get more out of both somehow.
Okay. No, I like having the background. I like when someone who's read them can tell me when to read them, because I do think that there is so much within them, and there's different ways you can read them. Like I had someone ask me, like, can I read Lost Metal if I haven't read Stormlight? And I'm like, well, I mean, yes, you can, but I feel like
you should
reveals that are going to happen in Lost Metal are reveals that you're going to then not have the same impact in Stormlight. So either way that you read them, the reveal is going to be impactful in that book and less in the other one.
I will say though, I think that Sando has actually said, by the time you get to Lost Metal, you need to be caught up with and be reading stuff chronologically for when it came out.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I do get it, but I don't know. I feel like,
I mean, it's not essential, but for the best experience.
I just feel like either way you go, the big reveal that is gonna be the big reveal in whichever book you get it in.
Yeah.
So like I think it could go fine either way. And the reason I feel like it's so hard to decide what order to read them in is because I like to read series in the order, right? Like I don't really necessarily want to be reading like Mistborn Era 1 book 1 and then jumping to another, like I don't want to jump in between series within the series is kind of my thing. Whereas I feel like you almost need to, the farther you get into Stormlight, you need to have that information, or you need to have read a significant amount of them before you start Stormlight, because you'll need them for Stormlight.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's getting more complicated.
It really is, and I love it. I love it so much, but it's really hard to say what the best order to read in is, right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
I personally am still happy with the order that I read them in and at the time that I started, because at the time that I started, the most recent release was Oathbringer, I think. Yes.
Okay. Did I start? I think that was me too, actually. I could be wrong, but I think that might be where I was too.
Yeah, because I think the only ones I've waited for have been Rhythm of War and Lost Metal.
When did Skyward come out? Because I was around.
I'm only talking Cosmere.
No, I know you're talking Cosmere, but that's kind of where I can line up.
I have it right here.
My start, you know what I mean? I think I started right before Skyward came out, like a little bit before Skyward came out. Because I think that was his next release after I jumped in.
Published in 2018.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's when I started, was just like right before Skyward came out. Is when I started getting into Brandon Sanderson.
I'm pretty sure I was all caught up by the time Skyward came out. Cosmo Wars, I mean.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I started reading Sando in, I want to say 2016.
I think I was maybe 2018, because because I remember you could, like, around the Skyward time, it was a lot easier to like get into signings with him and like those types of things. And then it started getting harder and harder and harder. And then it was like at the point where it was practically impossible unless you like won the lottery type thing, you know, which is always fun, but yeah. Okay. Back to Edgedancer. Sorry about that. Like,
detour.
But I will say that I find Szeth to be such an interesting character. I love him as a character. He's probably one of my favorites just because of how complex and interesting he is. And I really like how Lift recognizes him, knows who he is, and is like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go take these guys on. I've got this. You're like, okay, wait, just 1 second. We have a herald and this dude who's killed like every important figure out there in the government. Like, are you sure?
And meanwhile, your power is being able to slide.
I know. I like,
like the most disappointing radiant power ever. Like, imagine you see all these people flying around, and then you're like, and what can I do? I can slide.
It's so true. But I mean, on the plus side, she can apparently bring people back to life too, also which true. Is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I was just like, honey, I would be running so fast the other direction. Even your spren is saying run the other way.
Although, to be fair, Wendell would say run the other way from like a bug.
I love him. He's like, we should stay in the palace. It's so comfortable. They give us food.
Stay where it's safe.
But then there's Szeth, who's just like letting her go and letting her, like, he's like, nah, I'm not gonna kill you, even though that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm gonna let you go. I'm like, you are intriguing. Like,
yeah, he is really interesting, and I think it's also really interesting to find out more about an order that we haven't really seen at all up to this point.
Yeah. I think when I took the quiz, I was put into Skybreakers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And as I'm reading this one, I'm like, do I want to be in there?
Do you need to do the quiz again?
I need to redo the quiz.
I'm a truth watcher, which I'm not at all surprised by.
Yeah. I think that was my second one. Yeah. I also love the Sleepless in this one. Arklow. Oh, yeah.
I find them so creepy, the Sleepless.
I know. It's fun. But I think it's crazy how we don't know anything about them here, right? Like, we're kind of just being introduced. Like, even in this one, the only information we really get is there's others out there. He's incredibly old, incredibly powerful. Like, when he's talking about the Herald, he's like, oh yeah, like, it wasn't even not the Herald. Like, when the two minions, I guess, come after him, he's like, I mean, it wasn't really self-defense because they never could have killed me in the first place. Like, dang, like, dude's got power.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also wonder when we're going to get more of that whole race, I guess.
I wonder how important they're going to be, because
they feel important.
But they always, when we've seen them so far, just kind of are these side characters, right? Like, they're not doing anything really, yet they feel like they have so much knowledge and power that they should be important. Like, or is he just going to kind of let them be the Tom Bombadils of the Stormlight? Like, but you know what I mean?
I feel like it's the kind of thing where they're not going to be important in Stormlight, but they might be important in like Dragonsteel or something.
Right. That's true. That could be. Or maybe they're going to come in like Ghost Bloods.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have that kind of Condra vibe around them.
Right, where you're like, they have too much power to not
be important
eventually.
Right. Exactly.
And especially too much knowledge. Yeah. I really like that he has set himself up this way with these extremely powerful, knowledgeable beings, because it's a really good way to like pull in information if you need to.
Yeah, true.
Because I feel like some people like make it so you're almost getting the information in a less organic way. But when you have these ancient beings, right, this ready-made way for you to provide information to your characters. So
yeah, totally. But how long is this book? Because you've got the physical copy. I've got it, but only in Arcanum.
It is the actual book without the postscript, which I actually read the postscript too, which I never do, is 265.
There's so much in such a short space of time.
And they're little pages. They're not big pages. Yeah, he packs this book. Yeah. Well, and Dawn Shard too. It's about the same length and same size. Yeah. And that one is so packed. I remember reading
more than this.
Like, I don't even know what I just read.
Like no, I've only read that one once. And all I remember is being confused.
Yeah, I really need to go back and like this reread. I am really looking forward to, because I feel like I remember what happened, but I don't actually know what happened. Yeah, that's how I feel with it. So yeah, I agree. I just think that I really loved the story in this one too. Like there was so much information, but the story was interesting. It was intriguing. You're kind of just like invested all the way through.
Yeah. And it's a nice follow-up to the role that she plays in Words of Radiance, because I actually really like her scenes in Words of Radiance as well.
Did she get more than one?
Oh, is it just one?
Did she just have the interlude? And then she becomes more important. And then she comes into Oathbringer, right?
Yeah.
I think so. Gosh,
it's quite a long interlude, isn't it?
It was a long interlude, but I'm pretty positive she just has the interlude and then pops up later. Which is kind of what Brandon Sanderson was saying. He wanted to write Edgedancer intentionally because he wanted her to become more important, but felt like we needed to like see her growth and development and stuff a little bit more in order to have the same impact as she.
Well, I think he didn't want her to speak the third ideal off screen.
Off screen, yeah.
Which is why he did that one, I think. If I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think it is. Well, now I'm excited to move on to Oathbringer. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. I loved Oathbringer the first time through. I know that this one is probably the most dividing of them, because I know some people did not really like Oathbringer as much.
I mean, I think it depends on. I mean, I think it's still people still love it. It's just not their favorite out of the series, and that's where I sit. I still think it's great. It's just not my favorite.
The ending of this one, though, whew. Dude, if you put that book down during the last 100 pages, I don't know how.
No.
Like, I have no idea how you would do that.
I can't remember how things went for the others, but I vividly remember that when I was reading The Way of Kings, I hit the Sanderlanche at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And then after you hit that, you've still got like 300 pages.
Yeah, there is quite a bit after.
And I was just reading physically at that point. I think I stayed up till like 3-4 o'clock in the morning because I just could not finish it.
Yeah, I mean, how would you?
Impossible.
Oh, so good. It's so good. Honestly, I love how he does that. Okay, well, I think we'll end this live show here. The one for Oathbringer is going to be in a couple weeks, so keep an eye out for that. I'll post that on the Discord, and we'll see you then. Bye.